to a special holiday edition of the Old School Shooters podcast. My name is Jack Kilby, Executive Vice President of Great North Wrestling, and we're very pleased to welcome WCW legendary manager and personality amongst many, many other hats, the great Sonny Onoo, who we'll be speaking with today. But I would be remiss if I did not throw to my co-host and partner, the King of Connecticut, who looks particularly festive today in light of the season. How are you doing, King?
I'm doing great, and I want to give a shout out right now before I forget to a gentleman named John Livia, who runs a podcast called Serious and Silliness. He actually flew himself down from New York to be on my law firm's podcast in Boca Raton at our firm studio, and he just gave me my Christmas gift. Just sent me this Johnny Walker Black bottle. So I wanted to take the opportunity to give a shout out, if you will, to John Livia. I just booked the legendary Forrest Griffin, good buddy of mine, Forrest, to be on Serious and Silliness with Mr. Livia. And his subscriber count continues to grow, and I'm helping him, as I did with Hannibal, in getting some real premier UFC guests on. So I wanted to thank him, number one. And then number two, got my nice jacket here that I picked up back in September in Shaka. I was in Shaka for a little business. Purchased a nice villa over there in Shaka, Sicily, just 80 miles south of Palermo. Beautiful place. And I want to give a shout out to my tailor, Massimo Battista, who we're also going to have on the show. We've had him on our show down in Boca in the past. So it's the holiday season. I'm feeling festive. I'm feeling great. It's an honor to have Mr. Sonny Onoo on. And last time I saw Sonny was in Des Moines, Iowa. We were broadcasting together for a show for WACO, World Association of Kickboxing organization. It's Sonny is a kickboxing legend, and those were good times. And, I want to ask Sonny, you have some sons that out there in Iowa. We were talking with you and your wife about when we were together that are fabulous, fantastic wrestlers. So I want to give you an opportunity to talk about your boys a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it's what wrestling. I think wrestling is one of the great sports because it's the only martial art taught through the school system. And as you know, like all martial arts, the discipline that goes with it, whether it's amateur wrestling, or whether it's karate, judo, kendo, or jiu-jitsu, any of those things, one of the first things you learn is self-discipline, and so wrestling is the only sports that is taught, the martial arts that is taught through the school system in the United States. So I recommend that for wrestling to anybody. And for my kid, I shouldn't say kid anymore. He's 26 years old now, but his what he learned and become on his senior year, he was runner-up on junior in high school. In senior year, he went 47-0. Nobody scored on him offensively. Only score that he gave up was when he cut people, and he won the state at 126 pound at the biggest class 3A in the state of Iowa. And if you know state of Iowa, wrestling is it. So if you can come out of a state champion in Iowa at high school, those tickets of 30,000 people, a final sells out within a second. It's a pretty big deal if you ever seen one.
Definitely, Iowa and Oklahoma are the two traditional, wrestling states. Great lineage in the state of Iowa with Dan Gable and going all the way back to Farmer Burns here, with the show with Old School Shooters. And I want to kind of bring that up as a plug. Great segue because they're both in my book, Rough and Tumble, the history of American submission wrestling that World Shuto champion Eric Paulson and I wrote together many years ago. And I was supposed to be signing books today and hanging out with Jack Kilby in Brunswick, Georgia. That was the plan. But our event was rescheduled. So I'll be out there later in the week. But yeah, wrestling, absolutely. I've talked with Jack Kilby about how important wrestling was in my life and on other shows. And, Dan Severn was just on the show on the Old School Shooters. And I had Dan down in Boca Raton at our podcast studio. And he was talking about growing up on the farm and the lessons he learned and the lessons he learned on the wrestling mat. And, it's interesting because in our day, as older guys and me growing up, we never really called wrestling a martial art. But I think Dan Severn was one of the guys that was instrumental, here in the States to showing how dominant a martial art, wrestling is.
Absolutely.
And for those of us wrestlers like myself that had gone into the mixed martial arts after Dan, he was kind of the forefather of that. He was the first high-level wrestler to come into the UFC. And you have such a great background, Sonny, with a PKA and with kickboxing. This is a show that's Old School Shooters. And a lot of times, you may do these wrestling interviews where you talk more about pro wrestling, but we wanted to give you the opportunity to talk about your career overall in martial arts.
Well, thank you for mentioning my career, as they say. We were just ahead of our time. And for that matter, even Dan Severn. Dan and I was at Cody, Wyoming, where Eric Bischoff lived. Believe it or not, we were there at the Celebrity Golf and MMA event. It was a little fundraiser thing that we went down and hung out with Dan for a few days and went over to Eric's ranch and Mrs. B made us, Eric's really into cooking. So we had one of them Wagyu steaks and it's probably not good for my heart, but anyway, we put, you should see that man can still eat. He is still the beast when it comes to eating.
Oh yeah, Eric is such an interesting guy. And that's why I wanted to ask you, because a lot of folks know him just from his on-air persona in WCW. They don't know about his shoot background.
Right. Eric and I go back. I mean, one of the reasons I got into wrestling is obviously because of my association with Eric Bischoff. But we were friends in our early 20s. When you were in your early 20s, you guys remember what it was like. We're always sniffing and you're just like a young buck, right? You want to be out there, test yourself, and go out and see. I don't need to tell you what King of Connecticut is like with the ladies, but that's what we're doing. We were just chasing ladies all the time, and whether we were fighting or we're chasing ladies, those are the two things that we did in our early 20s. And Eric, he was an amateur wrestling, collegiate wrestler as well. He blew out his knee, and that's how he got into martial arts up in Minneapolis, and that's how we met, training at the karate school, and we both got into kickboxing, which was way before its time. If you look it up, PK, Professional Karate Association, Don Quine and Joe Corley, and I fought at the bantamweight class. I was fortunate enough to be, ranked number one from, this goes way back now, 75 to about 80, and got to fight some of the toughest guys, and you know, it was fun. But what was for Eric and I was that we would get in the car. We didn't have a lot of money, so we would get in the van or a car and drive. He would drive down from Minneapolis to Iowa, and we'd get in our van and go to Wisconsin, Chicago, North and South Carolina. We loved that Tobacco Road, because there were so many college down there with all the ladies, and we would go down to Florida for U.S. Open, and of course Battle of Atlanta in Georgia, and and we would just travel, go to a karate tournament, and once we got ranked, the promoter will fly us to like Long Beach, Ed Parker Nationals, and a lot of those bigger tournaments. But that's what we did. It was a way for us to get out there and actually fight somebody, not end up in jail. Certainly, I won the Canadian National Championship twice, up in Canada in Toronto, and just to give a plug to Jack, and I didn't get in trouble, so I didn't end up meeting you up there, so that was a good thing. And those are the things we did, and that's how we became such a close friend. And when opportunity came along, the fact that Eric knew that I was born in Japan and speak Japanese, and so that's how I got in the wrestling business.
Yeah, a lot of people don't realize this, that Eric Bischoff, the way that he originally knew Vern Gagne was through amateur wrestling. Eric was captain of a freestyle team with a state team in Minnesota, in addition to having wrestled folk style in high school. And that's how he knew Vern, was through his amateur wrestling prowess. And we just had Larry Zbyszko on as our last guest. And Larry talked about Eric in very positive terms. He's a good friend of Eric's, and talked about how Eric was just given the stick, just given the mic in the AWA, and boy did he shine as a broadcaster, and that's what led him to becoming the running WCW. So did you and Eric keep in touch? I mean, obviously you were fighting together and competing in your 20s. Did you and Eric stay in touch during that time frame?
Yeah, we've done some business together. We always been friends, and he's an entrepreneur, a lot like I am. He's a little bit, he'll fly off the handles and he'll say, "That's a great idea. Let's do it." That's Eric. I'm a little bit more calculative than that. But anyway, what happened to, this is something that would be interesting to the you fan base out there, that those of you who likes Eric Bischoff or who hates Eric Bischoff, you can blame me for Eric Bischoff being a professional wrestler. And so, because what happened was I created this little game called the Ninja Star Wars. That's when Star Wars was big, and obviously you guys know what Ninja Stars are like. Jack, being in jail, and all the prisoners always making those weapons out there.
Shanks, right?
Yeah, shanks, right? So Ninja Star is a little full-bladed or all-sided, a little star that you throw, like knife. And what happened was I made one of those out of Velcro, and it made a vest and a headband that made out of what Velcro would stick to. And if you remember the laser tag games, so this was kind of like low-tech laser tag. We could throw at each other and the thing would stick, and we created the storyline and, capturing the flags to, fighting each other. That's the game I created. And I went to Eric and I said, "Eric, check this out." He said, "Man, we got to put this on TV." I said, I have no idea how to market the stuff. And Eric did. And Eric said, "We need to put this on television." So I said, "How are we going to do that? We have no money, let alone, we can barely manufacture the deal." He says, "No." He says, let me work on it." And what he did was that Eric went to see AWA, the Vern Gagne, because they were having those syndicated shows that they would sell to like ESPN and TBS. And what they would do is, instead of paying them, they would give them commercial time, airtime. And so Eric went over there and showed them the game and says, "Hey, we want to go in partnership with you. You give us your national airtime, and we'll split the money from the profit, and we'll fulfill the sale." And that's how Eric got his first way into the professional wrestling contact, was through that. And because through that, people at the AWA and Vern and said, "You're a good looking kid. You're in sales. I like how you talk. How'd you like to be our syndicated salesperson?" That's how Eric got into professional wrestling. And how he got to be a announcer was another one of those things that one of the announcer was not available. I won't tell you why he wasn't available, but he wasn't available. They put a jacket on him, gave him a microphone, and says, "All right, go on to interview these guys." That's how Eric Bischoff got on camera.
Yeah, yes, Sonny, that's actually the story that Larry told, that Larry Zbyszko told on the last show. And he mentioned the gentleman, his name was Larry too, who didn't show up, but you're given this stick and you've got to perform. And Eric performed. It's kind of funny. If you remember when we did that show together in Des Moines, the ring announcer just quit after the first fight. And I just took the stick and hosted and tried to.
You filled it. Yep. You did a great job. I mean, those of us, we're very like, in a sense that hey, show has to go on, right? And
that's right.
I mean, the King of Connecticut came right through and took the spot, and we went on with the show, and it was the kickboxing was a USA team, I think, was fighting, or they were picking a USA team. I can't quite remember, but kickboxing is still out there. I work with a company called Shuto, which is the oldest MMA kickboxing.
Oh yeah. Well, Eric, I mean, Sonny, I've got to tell you, you mentioned Shuto. My book, Rough and Tumble, I did with Eric Paulson, who was the first American world champion in Shuto. Wait, did we lose Sonny?
Yep. We'll see if he pops back up.
No, that's great. Yeah. That's great, because I want to talk about Shuto, in Eric's history and the history of the Shuto promotion with Tiger Mask and Yuri Nakamura. So hopefully we can get Sonny to pop back in here.
In the meantime, King, did you want to talk about the ongoing saga with Mr. Flair that you were going to ask with respect to Sonny's relationship with Eric Bischoff?
Flair is he's old news in so many regards. I don't want to waste my breath on him. I do. If Sonny comes back on, I'll see if he heard of our saga. But I'll say it again, and I've said it so many times. I wish Rick and Wendy nothing but the best. Rick. I'm having my Johnny Walker Black, so I'm not a judgmental guy in any regards, as we'll get to when we talk about Mandy Rose. But if you're gonna be saucing it up and you get that booze muscle for Rick, turn your phone off, my man. Come on, grow up, Rick. Yeah. So where's Sonny? Has he texted you?
No, he probably had an issue with his connection, obviously. If he's not back in a couple of minutes, we'll pick it up when he can.
We had some fan questions regarding North Korea.
Ton of fan
lots of fan questions to get to. Do you want me to hop off and hop back on?
Yeah, we'll try that. Fans, we're just going to log out and then we'll back.
We'll come back on.
The kinks worked out by then. We'll see.
We'll do a part 2 here in a little bit.
Sounds good.